The Gray family was one of the most affluent families in Imperia's elite circles. They were also the sort of family that placed great importance on family hierarchy regardless of age. Perhaps I was being biased because my father somehow had me at the ripe old age of 80. As a result, I became one of the highest-ranking members in the Gray family ever since I was born, despite my very young age. During my full-month celebration, a 60-year-old real estate tycoon cooed at me, waving a deed. "Ah, little great-aunt. Don't cry, and I'll give you 3 estates." A 50-year-old medical expert quickly slid on surgical gloves. "Stay away from our great-aunt. Don't suffocate the baby." My entire family spoiled me rotten. And so, I still acted like a spoiled princess even though I was already 20 years old. One day, I was hit with a sudden whimsy of following the trend by going on blind dates, only to run into a massive mama's boy. I looked at the crabs and quietly asked, "Can you crack them for me?" He slammed the plate and barked, "You don't get to act spoiled here. My mother told me I should find a wife who can work. If you can't even crack crabs, then you can't possibly cook or clean for us." The guy had speakerphone on, allowing his mother to chime in. "If she wants to latch onto our family, she needs to learn how to serve us." My eyes turned teary as I opened up my family's group chat and sent a voice message, my voice sobbing. The entire Gray family heard me cry. Some uggo wants me to marry him just to serve his family. Right after I sent that voice message, Zach rapped the table impatiently. He tugged on his expensive tie and spoke to me like I was beneath him. "Snitching to your useless friends already? Don't push your luck, Jessica. You should feel honored that you got me as your blind date." His phone's screen was still lit up. Sure enough, his mother, Lena Housen, added shrilly, "Bring her right home, son. I've never seen anyone who can't even crack a crab. Who does she think she is? A princess? I will not bless this marriage until she does all the dishes." I sniffled, tears swirling in my eyes. I had never once had to do such menial tasks, even when I was a kid. So, doing the dishes wasn't exactly my forte. Besides, my house was filled with antiques, and my nephew always looked like he'd kill himself if I broke a single one by accident. I had it on good authority that he'd rather strangle himself with his hair than ask me to wash them. "I'm not going." I put my hands under the table. My voice was soft and nasally. "I'm going home." The chairs here were hard enough to make my back sore, and the AC's wind was blowing in the wrong direction. My head was spinning due to the restaurant's terrible environment. Staying here for even a second longer was definitely not on my agenda. I was going to leave, but Zach's face fell. He shot up from his seat, his chair scraping against the marble ground so harshly that the screeches seemed to tear through the air. He grabbed the Birkin bag I placed on the table and tossed it to a waiter. "Don't play hard to get. I bet this bag's a fake, too. Did you rent it? Or borrowed from a friend just to see me?" He went around the table and tried to grab my wrist. I was caught off guard by his impropriety as I dodged away. Alas, my back hit the chair, causing me to gasp in pain. "Don't touch me." My skin was delicate, and his rough fingers just scratched the back of my hand. Just as I expected, red welts appeared right then and there. Fiery pain burned through my flesh, and my tears rolled down my cheeks. Sadly, my obvious distaste for him only fueled his anger, and his chest heaved. "How dare you? You should feel honored that my mother is asking you to do the dishes. She's teaching you the rules of our household. You think looks can coast you through life? Once we're married, you will serve my parents. You will wake up at 6 a.m. to cook for us, and you will give all the money you make to my mother for safekeeping." Zach turned to the manager and snapped his fingers. "Get the bill, Clark, and it's on Ms. Gray." The manager came over obsequiously, holding a POS machine in his hand. "Of course, Mr. Shaw. I know." The manager turned to me, his smile was now gone and replaced by a cold expression. A flash of disdain flickered in his eyes. "Your total comes up to $186,000. Cash or credit?" I froze, my cries stopping. Zach was the one who wanted to meet here, and he was the one who ordered that $180,000 wine, but now he wanted me to pay for it? What the hell? I answered honestly, "I don't have any money on me. My nephew had my card, and I never had to pay for anything myself as I always had a group of bodyguards ready to do all the menial tasks for me. My father had told them not to dog my steps today because he didn't want to scare my date, and also because he didn't want my date to find out who I was, worried that this unknown man would try to charm my money out of my purse. Frankly, none of us expected a guy as unbelievable as Zach to become my date." Zach sneered. He looked at me as if I were a clown. "If you have no money, you shouldn't be acting like a princess. You have 2 options. Come home and apologize to my mother, and I'll pay for this meal. Or 2, you stay back and do the dishes until you clear your debt." Lena's laughter rang through the phone. I could smell the stench of harshness even though she wasn't here. "That's my boy. You should never show these gold diggers any mercy. And take her phone just in case she calls the cops on us." Zach's arm immediately lashed toward me like a snake. I clenched my phone tight enough for my knuckles to turn white. The chat group was already filled with furious messages, but I didn't have the luxury to check what was being written. "Let go." Zach growled, his face twisted with something fierce. He was too strong, and I was just a girl who couldn't even open a water bottle. So, it was no surprise that Zach managed to snatch my phone away, locking the screen. Then, he straightened his expensive suit and said matter-of-factly, "Keep an eye on her, Mr. Folks. I'll get my car. She's coming to my house even if she has to crawl on all fours." The manager led a group of burly guards and blocked the room's exit. I sat back down, my hands still screaming in pain. My tears wouldn't stop coming. No one had ever raised their voice at me my whole life, but now someone had just snatched my purse, my phone, and wanted me to do the dishes just to clear some debt that I didn't even accrue in the first place. All in all, I felt like crap. My heart wouldn't stop thundering, and my childhood disease flared up. I started hiccuping uncontrollably. The manager pinched his nose in disgust and stepped back, looking at me like I was trash. "Drop the act. You should feel grateful Mr. Shaw took a liking to you. Wipe your tears and get ready to live with the Shaws." I hiccuped, my tears still flowing down my cheeks like a broken faucet. I thought in bemusement, given how explosive my nephews can be, they're going to rip this manager and that uggo a new one. The door was ajar. Right after Zach was gone, hurried clops that could only belong to heels rang in the air. Then, the door was flung open like a rag doll. A middle-aged woman in an obnoxious ferret fur coat and a necklace filled with comically large pearls came barging in. I knew who that was the second I saw her. She had to be Zach's mother. Apparently, she had been in a salon in the mall next door. When her son called her, she came right away just to drill her so-called family rules into me. She had come in such a rush that her face mask was still on. "So, this is the princess who can't even crack a crab." Lena sized me up in derision. I could feel the venom in her gaze and the harsh critique that was at the tip of her tongue. The manager quickly simpered. "Mrs. Shaw. She's still being stubborn even though she can't pay for the meal." Lena scoffed, stalked toward me, and jabbed a finger at me. "You've got no money, and you came on a blind date here? Do you really think just anyone can marry into my family? You'll have to pay up if you want to marry my son." I covered my mouth and tried my best to swallow my hiccups. "I'm not marrying him," I argued, but my voice came out as soft as a whimper. Even worse, my retort earned Lena's ire. Her eyes went wide with rage, and she reached out to twist my ear. "How dare you talk back to me? Clearly, your family has failed to teach you any manners." I jerked my head away, but her long nails scratched up my cheek, leaving a red trail behind. It burned. "Don't touch me." I panicked and tried to run, but the burly guards stood in my way like human walls. Lena hated the fact that I dared to turn my back on her and flee, so she cursed, "How dare you run, you bitch. I'll make you submit, or my name isn't Lena." She yanked my wrist, and her eyes were immediately glued to my left hand as an exquisite emerald bracelet sat there. It was a beautiful piece. My father got the gemstone during a bid and had a top artisan make it into an heirloom for my full-month celebration. Lena's eyes shone with greed as she salivated over the bracelet. "You don't have money to pay for your meal, but you have enough for a fake luxury item?" She swallowed, her eyes never leaving my bracelet. "This thing hurts you if you wear it for too long. It's filled with radiation. I'll take it off your hands." She gripped my wrist as if she wanted to yank it off. Then again, she probably did since everyone with eyes could tell that she had her eyes on my bracelet. "Ow, let go." I screamed in pain. The bracelet was small. My nephew had lathered 3 layers of lube on me and still barely managed to slide it on my wrist. And that happened back when I was still a child. So, it was impossible to take it off without a pair of pliers. Lena couldn't care less for my discomfort as she pulled with all her might. She yanked at it so hard that my wrist started to turn purple. Soon, I could feel my arm turning cold and numb. "You're a stubborn mule, aren't you, you brat?" Lena was breathing heavily after all the exertion. Unfortunately for her, the bracelet was stuck on the back of my hand, refusing to come apart under her violent ministration. Lena lost it as she roared at the manager, "Get me some dish soap, Clark. I will take this fake off her hand even if it kills me." The manager nodded and left for the dish soap. I stared at my swollen wrist with wide eyes as my tears splattered against the rug. "My father gave this to me. You can't take it away." "Your father did?" Lena chuckled in disdain. "You can't even afford a meal here. So, there's no way your father could have bought this. I bet you stole it, you thief." She yanked at it again, and this time, something cracked. However, it wasn't the bracelet. Instead, she dislocated my wrist, causing a wave of pain to shoot up my body. I nearly blacked out right then and there. My legs buckled, and I crumpled to the ground. Ow. I clutched my limp left hand. Now, I didn't even have the strength to cry. That didn't stop Lena at all. If anything, she thought I was being dramatic and faking it. "Don't even try that with me. I know what a scam looks like. Listen here. I couldn't care less if you drop dead right now. That bracelet will be ours." She raised her leg, and the back of her heel came straight at my calf. I closed my eyes in resignation, wondering if I would actually lose my life under this raving lunatic's hands. Just then, the private room's door swung open, and in came Zach with his jingling car keys. Zach saw my prone form on the ground, but he didn't stop his mother. Instead, he frowned in distaste and said, "Don't waste your time talking to her. Just make her sign this contract. Sign what? I pushed through the pain and opened my eyes only to see Lena taking out a document from her bag. It read, prenuptial agreement. Lena hurled the papers into my face. The sharp edges cut my forehead and left a red line across it. Lena put her hands on her hips and acted like she had all the power over my fate. If my son weren't so eager to marry you for your face, women like you would never be fit to join my family. You'll sign this agreement whether you like it or not. My right hand was still working. So, I picked up the agreement with that lone shaky hand. The first clause stated that I would give Lena all my premarital possessions for safekeeping. The second said in black and white that I must do all chores. I was not to hire a housekeeper or even complain about the workload. The third said that I must bear a child for them within a year. If I were to give no children at all, Zach had the right to get a divorce without paying me a dime, while I'd have to pay them $5 million for wasting their time. The fourth explicitly wrote that my parents were not allowed in their house, in case their stench of poverty lingered. Zach came over and looked down at me imperiously. This is for our own good, Jessica. Women are gold diggers. I can't be sure you actually love me and not my money unless you sign this. He spoke as if he were doing me a great favor. Everything was happening so fast that I could only gape at his audacity. Sign this, and I'll pay for the meal. Also, I'll give you $2,000 every month. No one in Imperia's elite circle is as generous as I am. You should be honored. I stared at the smug Zach, who thought the world revolved around him, and felt disgusted. I tore the papers up and hurled the pieces back in his face. Screw you. I'm not marrying you even if that's the last thing I do. Zach's face fell immediately. He raised his hand but eventually held back the urge to hit me. So, you want to do this the hard way, huh? He clenched his teeth and stepped back. You can handle this, Mom. Lena sneered and took out a small box of red ink pad. Have the guards pin her down, Clark. No one's leaving until the papers are stamped. The manager shot his guards a look. Two burly men stepped forth and pushed my shoulders down. I struggled and thrashed against their brutish grip, but my dislocated hand was useless. It definitely didn't help that the bodyguard had already pinned my one good hand to my back. Let go. This is against the law. I shrieked until my throat was almost raw. Lena held the ink in a backup agreement. She approached me and gripped my thumb, forcing me to stamp the ink. My family's words are law in this circle. My husband just signed a $1 billion deal. Even the police chief has to bow to his power. You're just a nobody. Who do you think you are to go against my wishes? Her crimson, venomous nails wrapped themselves around me like bloodthirsty little snakes. I fought against her punishing hold as hard as I could, but she ripped my nails out instead. The pain I was feeling from my dislocated wrist and the air brushing against my raw nail beds made me shiver. My father will destroy you. My family will. My vision was blurry as I gasped through my angry, pained tears. Zach was holding up his phone, recording a video of my terrible state. Look at the camera and smile, Jessica. This will prove that you signed this willingly. You won't be able to do anything to us even if you take this to court. I could see Zach's face peeking out from behind his phone, and he was shamelessly grinning at me. Your father? Lena cackled with even more gusto. Your father is nothing to us. I'm still going to make you do the dishes even if he goes down on his knees and begs me not to. Lena's strength was more terrifying than I thought. My thumb was already bright red with ink, and it was less than an inch away from that humiliating agreement. Hopelessness drowned me along with my tears. I closed my eyes and bit my lip until the skin broke and I tasted metal in my mouth. Right before my thumb would touch the surface of that paper, a loud, thunderous explosion tore through the room. The thick, bulletproof door was smashed to pieces from a single kick, and the wooden shards blasted through the room like bullets. Before the guards who were pinning me down knew what was going on, the wooden shards had already hit them, causing them to barrel across the air, screaming. Lena's hand froze in her shock, and the ink pad fell against the ground with a clatter. Zach's phone plopped onto the carpet, its screen turning dim. Dead silence descended upon the room. Everyone was staring at the entrance in shock. When the cloud of dust eventually settled, the sight that met us made Zach and his mother gasp. That was because they were greeted with the sight of hundreds of top-tier bodyguards, clad in black suits and white gloves, standing outside. The bodyguards were marching around securing a tight perimeter around the restaurant, so much so that not even a fly could leave the establishment without getting a swat to the head. This was a lot more terrifying than any turf war shown in movies. After a while, the men parted like the Red Sea, leaving a wide path for someone to saunter through. The first one who came storming down the path was a real estate tycoon in his 60s. He was my nephew, Jason Gray. His walking stick, made out of pure gold, thudded loudly against the ground, and the dragon's head adorning it glinted under the lights. He radiated the undeniable air of an experienced leader. Following him was a well-respected man in the medical field, Jonathan Gray. He was in his 50s, and he, too, was my nephew. He had a silver first aid kit in his hands. Still, his usually firm and steady, were now shaking with rage, and his eyes radiated murder. The final man to show up was my father, Gregory Gray. He was in a custom-made wheelchair and was being slowly pushed into the room by a couple of his closest bodyguards. He was playing with two priceless trinkets, making them clang crisply. His hair was as white as snow, and his wrinkles definitely betrayed his age. Nevertheless, his eyes were still bright and piercing. There wasn't a trace of senility in them. These men commanded the respect of Imperia's elite circle, and they had all come here for my sake. Now that they were finally here, I felt as though a dam had been broken. All the injustice I'd been feeling broke through as I sobbed, "Dad, Jason, Jonathan." I cried as though I were an abandoned kitten as my dislocated left arm hung limply by my side. The edges of Jason's eyes went red as he slammed his stick against the ground. "It's all right, great aunt. I'm here." Jonathan tossed his first aid kit away and skidded over to me on his knees. He was crying from heartbreak. "What happened to your arm? Who did this to you?" My father didn't leave his wheelchair, but his eyes had found the agreement on the ground. His gaze flitted over the words, the broken ink pad, and finally, the pale Zach and Lena. He stopped playing with his trinkets, and the air around us seemed to get colder. My father didn't yell when he finally spoke. Nonetheless, it was filled with undeniable pressure as he demanded, "Who dares make my daughter do the dishes?" Jonathan didn't care about anyone else in the room. His hands, which had performed delicate brain surgeries on world leaders, were trembling as he gently cradled my bruised wrist. "Great aunt, hold still, please. This is going to hurt for a second," he whispered, his voice cracking. With a swift, practiced motion, he popped my dislocated wrist back into place. A sharp gasp escaped my throat, and fresh tears poured down my cheeks. Jonathan immediately took out a medical-grade cold compress from his kit, wrapping it softly around my swollen hand, before sterilizing my bleeding nail beds with alcohol wipes. He was so careful, acting as if I were made of fragile glass. "Who did this?" my father, Gregory Gray, asked again. His voice wasn't loud, but it echoed like thunder in the enclosed room. The silence that followed was suffocating. Zach, who had been acting like an unstoppable king moments ago, was now pale as a sheet. His phone lay forgotten on the carpet, screen cracked. He looked at my father, then at Jason Gray, the real estate mogul whose face graced the cover of every financial magazine in the country, and his knees visibly shook. Mr. Gray." Zach stammered, his confident demeanor vanishing into thin air. This is a misunderstanding. Your daughter lied to us," she said. "She had no money, and she refused to pay for the meal." "Shut your mouth," Jason roared, slamming his golden dragon head cane onto the marble floor. The sound cracked the tile beneath it. "You dare address my great aunt with such insolence?" Lena, still frozen on the floor with her pearl necklace tangled around her neck, swallowed hard. She tried to pull herself up, forcing a greasy, desperate smile onto her face mask. "Sir, gentlemen, please. It really is a misunderstanding. I was just teaching this young girl some basic manners. She was being disrespectful to my son, and teaching her manners?" My father raised an eyebrow. He slowly leaned forward in his wheelchair, his icy gaze locking onto Lena's greedy eyes. "You dislocated my daughter's wrist. You tore the nails from her fingers. You tried to force her to sign a contract to give up her freedom, and you tried to rob her heirloom bracelet." My father turned his eyes toward the restaurant manager, Clark Folks, who was currently trembling behind his bodyguards, sweating through his suit. "Manager Folks," my father said softly. "I believe this restaurant belongs to the Grand Imperial Group." Clark bowed so low his nose almost touched the carpet. "Why yes, Elder Mr. Gray. Grand Imperial Group owns 60% of our shares." "Jason," my father called out calmly. Jason immediately pulled out his satellite phone. "I'm already on it, Uncle." "Buy the remaining 40% of this establishment," my father ordered coldly. "Buy the entire building. Buy the land it stands on. Then, shut it down. Demolish it by midnight." Clark's eyes went wide in horror. "Mr. Gray. Please. I was just following Mr. Shaw's orders. Mr. Shaw is a VIP customer. He won't be a VIP anywhere by the end of the day," Jason sneered, speaking into his phone. "Secretary Vance, acquire the Grand Imperial restaurant chain. Immediately. Fire Clark Folks. Revoke his hospitality management license. Nationwide, blacklist him from the financial sector, and sue him for complicity in assault, extortion, and unlawful imprisonment." Within 3 minutes, Clark's phone buzzed violently. He answered it with trembling hands, only to hear his executive director screaming at him through the speaker, informing him that he was officially ruined beyond salvation, and facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Clark collapsed onto his knees, sobbing. Miss Gray, forgive me. I was blind. I didn't know." I hid my face against Jonathan's shoulder, refusing to look at him. My hiccups were finally slowing down, but my hands still burned terribly. Lena watched the manager get destroyed in mere seconds, and a wave of pure terror finally hit her. She clutched her son's leg, her voice shrill and panicked. Zach. Zach, do something. Call your father. Call Steven. Tell him. The Gray family is bullying us. Zach snapped out of his shock and quickly pulled out his backup phone. He glared at us with a desperate, frantic bravado. That's right. My father is Steven Shaw. He's the CEO of Shaw Enterprises. We just signed $1 billion investment contract with the city's top consortium. If you destroy us, the local government won't let you off. Hearing the name, Shaw Enterprises, my father let out a dry, mirthless laugh. Shaw Enterprises? My father mused, turning to Jason. Is that the little logistics firm that has been begging our subsidiary for a subcontract for the past 3 years? Jason checked his tablet and sneered in utter disdain. Yes, father. Steven Shaw has been sitting outside my office every morning for 2 months, begging for our maritime transport contract worth $1 billion. I signed the preliminary approval just this morning. Zach's face lit up with delusional hope. You signed it? Then we're partners. Mr. Gray, since we're business partners, we shouldn't let a small disagreement between women ruin our relationship. If Jessica apologizes to my mother right now, we can still go through with the deal. I stared at Zach in absolute disbelief. How could someone be this delusional? He genuinely thought a business contract was more important to my family than my safety. Jason looked like he wanted to rip Zach's head off with his bare hands. Partners? You filthy worm. You think your family is worthy of breathing the same air as us? Jason tapped his tablet screen twice. Contract cancelled. Furthermore, execute. Clause 9, breach of ethical conduct. Freeze all Shaw Enterprises assets tied to our bank, recall all loans immediately, and initiate a full audit on their tax records. Wait. No. You can't do that. Zach screamed, dropping his phone. Just as the words left his mouth, Zach's phone began to ring loudly on the floor. The caller ID displayed, Dad. Zach scrambled to pick it up, putting it on speaker in his panic. Dad. Dad. Help. The Gray family is. A shrill, hysterical roar blasted out from the phone speaker, cutting Zach off instantly. Zachary Shaw, you ungrateful bastard. What the hell did you do? Steven Shaw's frantic voice screamed so loudly it echoed off the shattered doorframes. The bank just froze our operating accounts. All our credit lines are terminated. The tax bureau is at my door with an arrest warrant. Jason Gray's legal team just sued us for $2 billion for fraud. We are bankrupt. We are going to prison. Zach felt as though lightning had struck him directly in the brain. He froze. His mouth agape, unable to utter a single word. Dad. Dad, it was just. I just went on a blind date with a girl named Jessica Gray. Zach stammered out. Jessica Gray? Steven Shaw screeched, his voice breaking into a terrified sob. You offended the sole daughter of Gregory Gray? The most treasured princess of Imperia? You animal. You and your useless mother have destroyed our entire ancestral line. Die. Go die right now. Click. The call disconnected. The room fell into an eerie, suffocating silence. Lena's face mask had slipped off entirely, revealing her pale, horror-struck expression. The billion-dollar dream she had bragged about for months had vanished into thin air, replaced by total financial ruin and looming imprisonment. She looked at me, sitting in Jonathan's arms, wrapped in custom silk, surrounded by hundreds of top-tier bodyguards. She looked at the emerald bracelet on my swollen wrist, the bracelet she had called a cheap fake. No, 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 no. Lena whimpered, crawling toward my father's wheelchair on her hands and knees. The comically large pearls on her neck snapped, spilling across the floor like scattered teeth. Elder Mr. Gray. Spare us. We were blind. We didn't know she was your daughter. My son is stupid, he didn't mean it. Look. She's fine. She's just got a little scratch. A little scratch? Jonathan stood up, his eyes bloodshot with rage. He was usually a mild-mannered top surgeon, but right now, he looked like a demon fresh out of hell. My Grey-Tant's hands are meant to play the harp and hold teacups. Her skin has never touched dish soap in her entire life. You dislocated her joint and ripped her fingernails. If her hand suffers any permanent nerve damage, I will make sure you and your son spend the rest of your lives in a wheelchair. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for the medical bills. Lena cried frantically, slapping her own cheeks repeatedly. I'll give you everything. I'll do the dishes for her. I'll be her servant. You want to be her servant? Jason stepped forward, his eyes cold. You aren't even worthy of scrubbing the tires of her carriage. At that moment, heavy, synchronized footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. A tall man in a dark blue police uniform strutted into the room, flanked by dozens of armed officers. It was Police Chief Henderson, the very chief Lena had bragged about earlier, claiming he would bow to her husband's power. Zach saw Chief Henderson and stumbled forward as if catching a lifeline. Chief Henderson. Save us. They broke into our room. They destroyed property and threatened us. Chief Henderson didn't even look at Zach. He walked straight past him, approached my father's wheelchair, and removed his cap, bowing deeply with profound respect. Elder Mr. Gray, Chief Henderson said formally. I received your chief legal counsel's report. I am deeply sorry that such a disgusting crime occurred under my jurisdiction. Lena stared at Chief Henderson in complete disbelief. Chief Henderson, it's me. Lena Housen. Stephen's wife. You had dinner with us last month. Chief Henderson turned around, his face completely cold and professional. Mrs. Housen, you and your son are currently under arrest for felony assault. Attempted robbery of an heirloom valued at $50 million, extortion. Forced signing of illegal contracts, and unlawful restraint. $50 million? Zach choked on his own breath, his eyes bulging out of his head. That bracelet, that green stone is worth $50 million? It was purchased at a Sotheby's auction 30 years ago by Mr. Gregory Gray himself, Chief Henderson said coldly. And you tried to pull it off her wrist. By force, causing severe bodily harm. Officers, cuff them. No. Get away from me. Lena shrieked, thrashing on the floor as two female officers pinned her down and snapped steel handcuffs onto her wrists. Zach. Help me. Save your mother. Zach was already being forced to the ground by two burly officers. His expensive suit was torn, his hair disheveled, and his face pressed flat against the floorboards. As he was being pushed down, his eyes happened to align with mine. I was sitting comfortably on a plush velvet chair brought in by our bodyguards, sipping warm milk that Jonathan had personally tested for temperature. My red, swollen wrist was resting gently on a soft silk pillow. Zach's eyes were filled with endless regret, horror, and despair. He had wanted a docile, working-class wife to serve his mother, clean his house, and bring him wealth. Instead, he had offended the one person who could reduce his entire universe to ashes with a single tear. Take them away, Chief Henderson commanded. As Lena and Zach were dragged out of the room, crying and screaming for mercy, my father gently reached out his weathered hand and patted my head. My little princess, my father said softly, his voice full of warmth and heartache. Let's go home. The Gray family manor was located on the highest peak of Imperia's most exclusive mountain district. It spanned over 50 acres, featuring private botanical gardens, heated indoor lakes, and a full team of world-class medical specialists on call 24 hours a day. The moment the family convoy pulled up to the main courtyard, the massive iron gates swung open, revealing rows of relatives waiting in high anxiety. Word had spread through the family group chat like wildfire. Where is she? Where is my great-aunt? A 70-year-old retired general, dressed in full military dress, came stomping out with a wooden staff, his eyes bright red with worry. Which bastard dared to hurt my great-aunt? Give me my saber. I'll march into that police station and snap his neck myself. Calm down, Uncle Robert. Jonathan is bringing her in, a 40-year-old female fashion mogul chimed in, holding a tray of imported ice creams and rare desserts. Oh, my poor little great-aunt. Look at her hand. It's all bandaged up. I was carried out of the car by Jason himself. Even though he was 60 years old and one of the most feared businessmen in Asia, he held me like I was a fragile porcelain doll, carefully stepping over the threshold to make sure not a single drop of wind hit my face. The moment I stepped into the grand living room, I was surrounded by dozens of aunts, uncles, nephews, and nieces, many of whom were twice or thrice my age. Oh, look at her forehead. There's a scratch. That horrible woman threw paper at her. Quick. Bring the scar removal ointment from Switzerland. The one that costs $100,000 a bottle. Is her hand still hurt? Jonathan, if you don't heal my great-aunt's wrist completely within 3 days, I'm pulling the funding for your medical research center. Jonathan wiped the sweat from his forehead, nodding frantically. Don't worry. Everyone. The bone is reset, and there's no fracture. It's just soft tissue. inflammation and minor skin abrasions. She just needs absolute rest and pampering. I sat on the massive velvet sofa, wrapped in a mink blanket, holding a cup of hot chocolate with marshmallows. Seeing all my elder relatives bustling around me in absolute panic, my mood finally lightened up, though I still let out a tiny, dramatic hiccup. Nephew Jason. I whined softly, pulling a pitiable face. My phone got smashed by that ugly guy. All my game saves are gone. Jason immediately knelt beside the sofa, taking out a gold embossed tablet. Don't cry, great aunt. I'll buy the gaming company tonight. I'll have their top developers restore your account, max out all your levels, and give you infinite in-game currency. And my bag. I sniffled. He threw my Birkin bag to the waiter. I've already ordered Hermes to send their entire high jewelry collection and every limited edition bag in their global vault directly to our manor tomorrow morning, the 40-year-old fashion aunt declared fiercely. You can use them as trash bags if you want. My father sat in his wheelchair across from me, watching the chaos with a fond smile. He gently raised his hand, and the room instantly quieted down. Jessica, my father said, his voice soft and tender. Are you still feeling hurt? I shook my head, taking a sip of hot chocolate. Not anymore. But, that mama's boy said his mother's word was law in Imperia's elite circle. Is that true? Jason let out a cold, brutal laugh. Elite circle? The Shaw family was just a third-rate vendor trying to climb into our shadow. Tomorrow morning, there won't even be a Shaw family left in Imperia. While I was enjoying the ultimate royal treatment at home, the outer world was undergoing a massive seismic shift. Overnight, Shaw Enterprises collapsed completely. Banks foreclosed on all their properties, suppliers canceled contracts, and federal auditors raided their headquarters. Stephen Shaw was arrested at his private villa for corporate tax fraud and money laundering. Meanwhile, Zach and Lena were held in the high-security detention center without bail. However, Lena Housen was not a woman who gave up easily. She was malicious, petty, and cunning to the core. Realizing that legal means could not save them, she used her last bit of hidden cash, smuggled via a corrupt relative, to hire a dirty online public relations team. By noon the next day, a heavily edited video surfaced on the internet and quickly blew up across all social media platforms. The video showed me sitting elegantly in the restaurant while Zach and Lena were being surrounded by dozens of intimidating, black-suited bodyguards. The clip was intentionally trimmed to remove the parts where Zach snatched my phone, broke my wrist, and tried to force my thumb onto the prenuptial agreement. Instead, it was framed to make it look like I was an arrogant, rich heiress who brought hundreds of thugs to beat up an innocent middle-class family over a minor blind date disagreement. Accompanying the video was an anonymous, tearful article written by Lena. Help us. The rich and powerful are crushing the weak. My son went on a blind date with a woman named Jessica Gray. She spent hundreds of thousands on expensive food and wine, refused to pay, and when my son asked her to split the bill, she called her billionaire family to assault us. Now my husband's business is destroyed, and my son and I are facing prison. Is there no justice for normal people in this country? Because society often sympathized with the underdog, the internet erupted into a frenzy. Oh my God. Look at those bodyguards. That's so scary. Is she a mafia boss's daughter? Jessica Gray? Isn't that the Gray family from Imperia? They think they own the world just because they have money. Forcing a poor family into bankruptcy over a blind date? That's evil. Cancel the Gray family. Boycott their businesses. Look at that girl's face in the video. She looks so innocent, but she's actually a monster. She belongs in prison. Sitting in my sunroom, eating fresh strawberries fed to me by a maid, I scrolled through the toxic comments on my tablet. My brow furrowed slightly. They edited out the part where she pulled my hair, I grumbled softly, showing the tablet to Jason, who was reviewing quarterly reports nearby. Jason took one glance at the screen, and his face turned darker than a stormy night. His temperature plummeted so fast the room seemed to chill. They really think they can use the media to bully us? Jason sneered, his eyes flashing with lethal disdain. Secretary Vance. Secretary Vance stepped forward instantly. Mr. Gray? Release the full, unedited CCTV footage from the restaurant, including the audio recordings from Zach Shaw's phone, which our tech team recovered from his cloud server, Jason commanded coldly. Also, publish the scan of that disgusting prenuptial agreement and the official forensic injury report from Imperia Central Hospital. And one more thing, my father's calm voice echoed from the doorway as he was pushed into the room. Settle the legal fees for every single netizen who spread Slander about my daughter. Sue every single one of them for criminal defamation. No settlements. No apologies accepted. Within an hour of the Gray family's official statement, the internet went completely silent. Then, it exploded into an absolute inferno of rage, this time directed entirely at the Shaw family. The Gray family's official media account released a high-definition, 4K video. Reel with crisp, crystal-clear audio. In the video, viewers clearly saw 1. Zach Shaw ordering a $180,000 bottle of rare wine without asking me, then demanding I pay for the whole meal. 2. Zach barking at me that I must work like a slave, cook, clean, and give all my income to his mother. 3. Lena Housen barging in, verbally abusing me, trying to yank off a $50 million heirloom bracelet, and deliberately dislocating my wrist until I screamed in agony. 4. Lena trying to forcefully rip out my fingernails to make me sign an absurd prenuptial agreement that treated women like draft cattle. 5. High-resolution medical scans showing my dislocated joint, torn nail beds, and severe bruising, signed off by the top medical board of the country. The contrast between my quiet, tearful state and Lena's violent, greedy face was stark and horrifying. The public was utterly outraged. Holy shit. That woman is a literal monster. She dislocated a girl's wrist over a bracelet? My family's words are law. You will wake up at 6 a.m. to serve us. Who the hell does this broke-ass Shaw family think they are? The prenuptial agreement requires her to hand over all premarital assets, give birth within a year, and bans her parents from visiting? Is this a marriage or a slave contract? She tried to steal a $50 million heirloom and called it a fake. The sheer audacity and greed. Send her to prison for life. Wait. Did you hear what the medical expert called her in the video? Great aunt. She's literally the highest-ranking princess of the Gray family. Zach Shaw went on a blind date with a goddess and treated her like a servant. What a massive idiot. The online sentiment flipped 180 degrees in a matter of minutes. The PR firm Lena hired was immediately banned, its directors arrested for orchestrating a malicious smear campaign. The netizens who had previously insulted me were now flooding the Gray family's page with terrified apology letters, begging for forgiveness before our legal team served them with court summonses. The Shaw family wasn't just bankrupt anymore. They were publicly executed in the court of public opinion. 3 days later, my wrist had mostly healed thanks to Jonathan's top-tier medical care, though it was still wrapped in a light silk bandage. It was a chilly, rainy afternoon. I was sitting on the glass balcony of the manor, wrapped in a fluffy cashmere cardigan, watching the rain wash over the rose garden below. Down at the main iron gates of the Gray estate, 3 figures were kneeling in the pouring rain. It was Stephen Shaw, Lena Housen, and Zach Shaw. Lena and Zach had been released on temporary medical bail due to Lena's severe panic attacks in prison, but their freedom was short-lived. Their house had been seized by the court, their luxury cars towed, and all their accounts frozen. They didn't even have enough money to buy a meal. Stephen Shaw had dragged his wife and son through the mud all the way to our mountain estate, forcing them to kneel on the sharp gravel in the freezing rain. Miss Gray. Elder Mr. Gray. Please have mercy. Stephen Shaw screamed, slapping his own face repeatedly until his cheeks were raw and bleeding. We were wrong. We are dogs. We are filth. Please give us a way to live. Lena was no longer wearing her fur coat or pearl necklaces. She was drenched. Hair plastered to her skull, shivering violently as she banged her head against the wet iron gate. Little great aunt. Princess Jessica. I was blind. Lena sobbed hysterically, her shrill voice cracking in the wind. I am a crazy old hag. I shouldn't have touched your hand. I'll break my own hands right now. Just please tell the police to drop the charges. My son is still young, he can't go to prison. Zach knelt beside her, his head pressed flat against the muddy ground. He didn't dare look up. The arrogant, self-righteous man who had barked at me to cook and clean was now shaking like a drenched rat, sobbing in sheer terror. Jessica. I was wrong. Zach wept, his voice filled with unbearable humiliation and despair. I shouldn't have listened to my mother. I shouldn't have acted so proud. Please, for the sake of our date, spare us. I leaned against the glass railing, holding a warm cup of milk tea, looking down at them coldly. Jonathan walked up behind me, placing a warm coat over my shoulders. Do they bother you, great aunt? I can have the security guards drive them off the mountain. No need, I said softly, taking a slow sip of tea. It's kind of nice to watch. It reminds me how lucky I am to have you guys. Jonathan smiled warmly, his eyes full of affection. You are our family's greatest treasure. Anyone who tries to hurt you is fighting against all of us. Down below, the manor's grand front doors opened. Jason stepped out holding a black umbrella. He walked slowly down the long cobblestone path toward the iron gate, his dragon-head cane tapping rhythmically against the stone. The three people kneeling in the rain looked up with frantic, desperate hope, thinking that their groveling had finally moved the Gray family. Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray. Stephen begged, crawling forward. Are you letting us off? Jason stopped behind the gate, looking down at the shivering family as if they were squirming maggots. Letting you off? Jason sneered coldly. Stephen Shaw, do you know why my father allowed you to kneel here for 3 hours in the rain? Stephen froze, trembling. Why? So my great-aunt could enjoy the view while having her afternoon tea, Jason said casually. Lena's face turned deathly pale. You treated our suffering as entertainment? You threatened to turn my great-aunt into a household slave, Jason's voice lowered, becoming lethal and dark. You dislocated her hand and tried to steal her heirloom. Do you really think a little kneeling and crying can wash away your sins? Jason turned his head slightly toward Secretary Vance. The trial is set for tomorrow morning. Make sure the prosecution asks for the maximum sentence. Without parole. 10 years for assault and robbery, 15 years for corporate fraud and extortion. No. No. Zach screamed, lunging toward the gate, but 2 heavy security guards slammed him back onto the muddy ground. Jessica. Save me. Jessica. Jason didn't give them another glance. He turned around and walked back into the warm, glowing manor, leaving the Shaw family screaming in utter despair as the cold rain poured down on them endlessly. A month later, my wrist was completely healed, leaving not even a faint scar behind. To celebrate my full recovery, and also to officially introduce me to the highest echelons of global society so that no blind date idiots would ever mistake my identity again, my father hosted the grandest gala Imperia had seen in a decade. The venue was the Imperial Palace Hotel, the most luxurious hall in the capital. The streets surrounding the venue were closed off by municipal traffic police. Hundreds of sleek, ultra-luxury cars lined the red carpet, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, foreign royalty, top politicians, and legendary artists all gathered, bringing priceless gifts just to catch a glimpse of the Gray family's mysterious, highly revered princess. Inside the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast warm, glittering light over velvet draperies and ice sculptures. I wore a custom pastel pink gown woven with real diamond threads, designed by Paris's top haute couture master. The emerald bracelet, restored to pristine polish, sat proudly on my left hand, glinting beneath the lights. Presenting Miss Jessica Gray, the master of ceremonies announced with deep reverence. The entire ballroom fell into absolute silence. Hundreds of powerful figures bowed their heads slightly as my father pushed his wheelchair to the center of the stage, with Jason and Jonathan standing respectfully behind him like loyal guardians. My father took the microphone, his voice echoing clearly throughout the hall. Today, my father began, his eyes scanning the crowd with undeniable authority. I host this banquet for one reason only. My daughter, Jessica, is 20 years old today. She is the light of my life, and the highest-ranking elder of the Gray family. He paused, his gaze growing sharper. Recently, some blind, foolish dogs thought my daughter was weak because she is gentle. They thought they could bully her, disrespect her, and demand she serve them. A cold shudder ran through the crowd. Everyone knew what had happened to the Shaw family. Stephen Shaw was currently serving 25 years in prison, Lena Housen was sentenced to 12 years, and Zach Shaw was serving 15 years. With all assets confiscated. The entire Shaw lineage had been erased from Imperia's elite society overnight. Let this be a warning to all, my father's voice rang out, heavy as a mountain. In Imperia, anyone who makes my daughter cry will pay with everything they own. If she wants the moon, I will buy the aerospace company to pull it down for her. If she wants to act like a spoiled princess, she will be a princess for the rest of her life. The ballroom erupted into thunderous, deafening applause. Long live Princess Jessica. Wishing Miss Gray eternal happiness. Tycoons and nobles stepped forward one by one, presenting their gift registries. With utmost respect. A tech mogul presented a private island in the South Pacific. A European duke presented a medieval castle with thousands of acres of private vineyards. A foreign diplomat presented a rare, pink diamond necklace valued at $80 million. I stood beside my father, holding a glass of sweet sparkling juice, feeling the warmth and unconditional love of my family. After the formal speeches ended, the banquet transitioned into a relaxed, cheerful ball. I escaped to the long dessert table in the corner, happily picking out small, intricate fruit tarts. Great aunt. Be careful, don't eat too much cold stuff, your stomach might hurt. Jonathan hurried over, holding a warm silk shawl, placing it over my shoulders. Great aunt. Look. I bought that gaming company you like. Jason came trotting over with his dragon head cane, holding a gold tablet with a huge grin on his 60-year-old face. The developers made a special NPC modeled after you. You're now the immortal queen of the game world. Really? My eyes lit up, taking the tablet eagerly. Can I spawn infinite dragons? Of course. You can spawn anything you want. Jason laughed heartily, patting his chest proudly. A handsome young heir from a top diplomatic family nervously approached us, holding a glass of champagne, bowing politely. Elder Mr. Gray, Dr. Gray. May I have the honor of asking Miss Jessica for a dance? Before I could even answer, my two nephews stepped forward like human shields, glaring at the poor young man with murderous intensity. A dance? Jason narrowed his eyes coldly. Do you know how to crack crabs? The young man blinked, completely bewildered. Pardon? If my great-aunt wants to eat crabs, can you crack them for her without hurting her delicate fingers? Jonathan asked sternly, crossing his arms. Can you guarantee she will never have to wash a single dish in her entire life? Can you give her 3 island estates just for a smile? I. The young heir stammered, sweating profusely under the terrifying pressure of the 2 Gray family patriarchs. I couldn't help but burst into a sweet, ringing laugh. I pulled on my father's sleeve, pouting playfully. Dad, look at them. They're scaring everyone away. How am I ever going to find a boyfriend now? My father chuckled softly, turning his wheelchair around to pat my hand tenderly. Why look for a boyfriend, my sweet princess, my father said with an affectionate, indulgent smile. The world is yours. Our family will spoil you forever. I looked at my loving father, my fiercely protective nephews, and the sparkling, boundless life ahead of me. I took a bite of my fruit tart, leaned back against the plush velvet cushions, and smiled like the happiest, most spoiled princess in the universe.